If we do not sail now, we die in the shadows. Just let that sink in for a second. That desperate plea from Ralph Fitch in 1599, it wasn't just some dramatic speech. It was literal life-or-death reality for a starving England. And, surprisingly, it's the exact spark that ignited one of the most unbelievable corporate transformations in human history. So welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tracing an absolutely impossible rise. We're going to see how a ragged group of impoverished merchants launched a desperate gamble from a cold, damp city, and somehow, against all odds, built a corporate machine that conquered an entire subcontinent. This is the wild story of the East India Company, going from desperate beggars to absolute rulers. Okay, picture this. The year is 1599. You're in a dimly lit, drafty room in London. A flickering candle is casting these long shadows across a map on a heavy wooden table. And outside? Outside, you can practically hear the distant, mocking laughter of the Dutch and Portuguese merchants, who were basically the undisputed masters of the seas at the time. See, while the rest of Europe was literally drowning in wealth from the spice trade, England was starving. To put this into perspective, think about the number one. 1 single pound of pepper would cost an average Londoner in 1599 their entire life savings. No joke. It was a bleak, truly desperate existence, and they were completely shut out of the global economy. So into this dark, candlelit room walks Ralph Fitch. He steps up to the table and just drops a handful of glittering rubies and rich, colorful silks right onto the wood. The gathered merchants literally gasp. Fitch paints this vivid picture of India for them, a place where treasuries are just overflowing with gold, and grand cities utterly dwarf the muddy little streets of London. It's a land of unimaginable wealth. And he lays out the brutal truth, which kind of becomes their ultimate corporate motivator. If they don't sail to it, they're going to perish in the shadows. Section 1. A single terrifying bet. All right, let's dive into this. Picture the chamber of Queen Elizabeth I. She's sitting on her throne, looking incredibly sharp and calculating. A long parchment scroll gets rolled out, a quill scratches, and a heavy royal wax seal hits the document. Boom. New Year's Eve, 1600. The Queen signs a royal charter. But here's the thing you got to understand. This wasn't a declaration of war. It was just a corporate permit. Heavy wooden chests were suddenly filled with dumped gold coins as these merchants signed their names in blood-red ink. The East India Company was born. Section 2. Descent into the unknown. Now imagine 4 tiny wooden ships caught in a massive, pitch-black storm at the treacherous Cape of Good Hope. The wind is shrieking. Thunder is cracking overhead. The wooden hulls of these ships are groaning under just immense pressure. Waves are crashing over the decks, and sailors are screaming, gripping the rigging with pale, scurvy-ridden hands. For months, they battled this relentless ocean. Scurvy literally rotted their gums, and the sea swallowed their men whole. It was a total nightmare. Section 3. The Clash of Worldviews. Eventually, they make it. The storm clears in 1608, and they see the shimmering coastline of Surat, India. The English honestly thought they were arriving as grand civilizers. But man, were they wrong. Just look at the reality of the situation. The Mughal Empire held a staggering 25% of the entire world's wealth. Think about that for a second. A quarter of all global riches was concentrated right there. They were dealing with an absolute superpower. The historical irony here is just incredible. Captain William Hawkins steps off his boat, sweating profusely in heavy English wool, thinking he's a big deal. He looks up and sees blinding gold, towering marble pillars, and literally elephants draped in silk. Sitting right in the middle of this unimaginable opulence is Emperor Jahangir on a throne made of solid jewels. To the emperor and his intimidating court, Hawkins wasn't some powerful representative of the English crown. They viewed him as nothing but a dirty, desperate beggar. Portuguese rivals whispered into the emperor's ear, Jahangir just waved his hand dismissively, and Hawkins was cast out into the heat, empty-handed. Total humiliation. It proved that in the grand global economy, England was a nobody. Section 4. Blood and Diplomacy. So what do you do when diplomacy completely fails? You pivot. Night falls in 1612, and cannons start flashing in the darkness at the Battle of Swally. 2 lone English ships find themselves entirely surrounded by a massive Portuguese fleet. Massive booms shatter the night, wood splinters everywhere, and men fall screaming into the pitch-black ocean. If the emperor wouldn't listen to reason, well, the company decided to use violence as their business pitch. And against all odds, they actually sink the Portuguese armada. That burst of violence changed the entire game.
Sir Thomas Roe, a very sophisticated English ambassador, later walks through the Mughal court, but this time with his head held high. Emperor Jahangir looks at him with newfound respect because the Mughals had finally seen their naval teeth, right? Roe bows, holds out a signed treaty, and a deal is struck. The English are officially granted the right to build factories, which were basically heavily secured trading outposts right on the coast. They finally had their vital foothold.
Section 5. Rise of the Corporate Machine.
To survive in this cutthroat environment, this corporation had to morph into a monster. It's a calculated step-by-step escalation. First, they build those secured factories with high stone walls. Second, they mount heavy fortress cannons facing inland. Third, they start hiring massive private armies, half British redcoats, half Indian sepoys, all raising muskets in perfect unison. And fourth, they use that brutal force to conquer the subcontinent. It's like a corporate takeover, but with actual armies.
What's truly staggering to me is the sheer scale of this transformation. Think about where they started versus where they ended up. They began as desperate beggars practically pleading for pepper and ended as rulers. They arrived in rotting, creaky wooden ships and ended up building massive stone cities like Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. They started with a fragile piece of paper, a corporate permit, and evolved into a militarized beast with private armies marching through clouds of musket smoke. Absolutely wild. If we just look back at the timeline, it reveals an unprecedented escalation. In just 13 short years, from that desperate candlelit gathering in 1599 to the bloody Battle of Swali in 1612, the entire foundation for a corporate empire was laid. Those coastal points of Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta started glowing like embers on a map, slowly but surely spreading inward across the whole continent. What began as a desperate plea by a few London merchants morphed into a cold, calculated machine that literally built its own cities and hired its own armies. The traders had quite literally become the rulers. Which leaves us with this final, stunning question to ponder. How did a simple corporate permit become a license to conquer a nation? It is a terrifying testament to the power of a company that owned an empire. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, guys, and always keep questioning the history you think you know.